The Electronic Entertainment Expo, otherwise known as E3, has been going on since 1995, and up until 2019, it had gone on every single year. 2020, however, got canceled obviously because of COVID. 2021, they brought it back, and it was pretty mediocre. And this year, they also canceled it again. And I actually kind of enjoyed the showcases that went on anyway. Now, I'm only 20, so I haven't been around for every E3, but I have gotten to catch just about every single presentation since about 2011, and I was pleasantly surprised with this. Like, I honestly wasn't expecting that much overall, but we ended up getting quite a few huge announcements for 2023 that are probably going to change the whole gaming landscape for a while. Now, the first showcase that was pretty much a part of this was the Sony State of Play on June 2nd. I wouldn't have counted this since it wasn't during the same week as everything else. However, I felt that it should be a part of it because some of the games ended up being announced here and shown off more later during these other events. The first one of those being my personal favorite announcement of probably all of Naughty 3, and that was Resident Evil 4 Remake. RE4 is one of the best games ever made. That's not an exaggeration either. This game inspired so many other games after it. It has some of the best level design, some of the best pacing, I would say. The original GameCube release was freaking groundbreaking, and to this day, I would say it holds up really well. And I believe the development team doing this remake is actually the same group of people doing the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was also really good. Uh, I have some really high hopes for this game. I would be amazed if it even came close to being a flop. I think that they could end up ruining a few things. However, if they do, it's not a huge deal to me. The original will always be playable and will still probably hold up 20 years from now. Callisto Protocol was also shown at the State of Play, and this one was later shown at Summer Games Fest for a small segment. The gameplay in this game looks really good. I mean, it's a Dead Space spiritual successor. So if you're a fan of the space horror survival kind of genre, this is right up your alley, and I would 100% check this one out. It looks insane. Now, Sony also had a bunch of PSVR 2 announcements. Horizon Call of the Mountain is a Horizon Zero Dawn spin off game. At first, I wasn't too excited for this one when they first showed it off, but the gameplay here actually has me convinced that this will be one of the better VR games in existence, honestly. It looks like it's an adventure similar to Horizon game, but I don't think it'll be quite as open. It's a whole new character. It's not Aloy, and it still looks like it's got the similar combat, similar enemies within the Horizon universe. So if you're a fan of that franchise, it might be worth checking out. However, we still have to see the pricing for PSVR 2. Horizon Forbidden West also got an update announced at the show. I had just barely beaten Forbidden West, and it was pretty good. It looks like they fixed the performance mode, from what I've been hearing, and at some point they will probably add DLC to this game. Back on the topic of VR, Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village will be on PSVR 2, and that to me is a huge addition. That might be what pushes me over into actually getting one. Street Fighter 6 was at the show, and this was actually a pretty cool announcement. Even though I'm not the biggest Street Fighter fan, I have played the games, and it looks like there's a lot of new stuff here. But yeah, I think Street Fighter fans seem to be really happy with this one, and that to me is all that matters. Final Fantasy 16 was the closer for this show, and to me, this is a huge announcement because it really it really looks like a return to form for the franchise, where 15 was pretty much a Western open world style game. 16 looks like it's more with the Final Fantasy roots in it. It looks like it's taken some of what made Final Fantasy 7 Remake's combat good. It looks like it's taken some of the old Final Fantasy elements, just the pure fantasy medieval style. I like everything they've done here. It looks like a really fun game. I can't wait to get my hands on it when it comes out in 2023. Stray and Roller Drome were two other games shown off at this event. Stray was supposed to come out a couple years ago, actually. It's a cat adventure game published by Annapurna, and I think it comes out in July. It's going to be launching day one on the PlayStation Plus Premium subscription, which is actually pretty big because Sony had said that they weren't going to be getting any first-party games out onto that subscription day one. So at least knowing that there's going to be new additions onto the subscription might convince more people into buying into it. And the same actually goes for Roller Drome, which comes out a few months later, I believe. This is a third-person roller skating shooter, and it's a fun-looking idea. I've always been a big fan of, like, Tony Hawk, and I just imagined that with multiplayer shooter elements thrown into it. It sounds like a fun idea on paper. We'll have to see how it actually is in action. And that game, it kind of looks like the game Sable. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I thought it was a Sable sequel, actually. But anyway, that was pretty much that whole first presentation on June 2nd. Sony, they kind of did surprise me there because state of plays have been really off and on over the years. Sometimes they're decent, sometimes they're absolutely horrible, and I wish they hadn't even happened, really. They would just feel like a waste of time sometimes to me, and they could have just been a bunch of Twitter announcements. However, this one I felt that it may have been their best state of play ever. Now, that's not counting their big showcases, that's just strictly state of plays. There was a lot here to kind of recap. Again, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Callisto Protocol, Resident Evil Village VR, Final Fantasy 16, Horizon Call of the Mountain, Street Fighter 6, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Stray, Roller Drome. I think there may have been a few others I'm missing. Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered on PC as well. But yeah, it was a pretty good presentation considering the expectations. So overall for an E3 presentation, this would have been a 6 or 7 out of 10. However, since it was a state of play, I'd probably even say an 8 to 10 out of 10. It was a really good presentation considering Sony said we were only getting third-party announcements. And it felt like it was the best possible presentation within reason, if that makes any sense. Most of what was shown here is going to be on Xbox and PC as well, except for Final Fantasy 16, I believe, and obviously the PSVR 2 games. So all of these are going to be accessible to a ton of players. Also, my takes are indeed subjective, just like everyone else's. Some games I'm going to prefer more than others, and it might make it so it's an 8 out of 10, whereas somebody might see it as a 2 out of 10. And also, alongside that, time will tell how well these showcases age. It's like this every year. Sometimes there's a really good showcase, but it has a ton of CGI, and those games end up not being very good. Sometimes even the gameplay ends up looking good, but then the game itself won't end up being that good. It happens. So this is just based off of the event itself and what we know so far. And the same applies for every showcase I talk about. But anyway, moving on to June 9th was Jeff Keeley's Summer Games Fest show, and this one was a little bit underwhelming for me. Jeff Keeley was hyping this one up a lot, and he eventually said to tame or temper expectations on it, which makes sense. And it is his job to market his own showcase, obviously, but he was making it sound like we were going to be seeing the second coming of Christ on TV or something like that. And what we actually got here wasn't bad as a whole package. I think my problem with it was that it was a 2-hour showcase, and only 10 to 15 minutes of it was worth watching. That's just in my opinion, though. But I do really like Jeff Keeley, and his showcases are always at least somewhat fun. And there was some memorable stuff here. So we did see more Callisto Protocol, and he brought on one of the developers for that. We saw a lot of CGI. We did see the Last of Us Remake at the very end with Neil Druckmann there. He also told us that the TV show is wrapping up filming and will be out in 2023. And he did tell us about the Last of Us Factions project, which, if you don't know, Last of Us Factions was the original multiplayer for The Last of Us. And the sequel to this is actually a much bigger multiplayer project. He showed us a piece of concept art from it. It looks like it's going to be the size of an actual full game rather than just a side piece. Whenever it comes out, I'll probably play it day one because I loved the original Last of Us Factions. I do think this is going to be a bigger hit than the original Factions. However, I don't know what this is going to be exactly. Like, it could be closer to something along the lines of DayZ, or it could be just a big Battle Royale game. Nobody really knows right now, though. But The Last of Us Remake, this has been a bit of a controversial topic because a lot of people don't think it needs a remake. I personally don't think it needs a remake. However, I do think it's a cool remake nonetheless. Now, I don't think it's as crazy as the Resident Evil 4 remake, but this is going to be a good remake. People don't quite understand what it's all changing. So it is a rebuild of the original game, or a rebuild of the remaster, technically. They're doing a whole visual lift. They're going to be changing a few gameplay elements, but I don't think anything in the story can or will change. It's going to be the same story that was told before with a bunch of quality of life changes. And their goal was to get this out before the TV show, I'm sure, just to get more people hopping on the game. And also, kind of a PS5 tech demo. in a sense. The visuals here are just crazy. It's a big upgrade visually, and I don't think people realize just how big of an upgrade it is until they see it when it actually launches. It also sounds like that this was done by Naughty Dog's side developers rather than just a full main crew. And Last of Us is one of my favorite games of all time. It's one of the best PlayStation exclusive titles of all time. I don't know how many people like Last of Us 2. I think that one was really controversial, but even that is a really good game. And it's clear that some of the people who are hating on that are just coming back to hate on this one just because. But that's just my take. Also, $70 is a bit steep for this one. That is the launch price of it. I don't think it's worth $70. I would definitely recommend waiting until at least Black Friday, which is 2 months after this launches. And also, this is coming to PC, so PC players, you're actually going to be able to experience this. I'm sure the mod support for it will be awesome. It's pretty exciting. It's a great game. Modern Warfare 2 also had some gameplay here, and to me, it looks like a pretty big step up from Modern Warfare 2019. I did play the old MW2 as a kid. I was little when that one came out, but it was a blast on 360. Online was really fun in that game. I know it's been memed about that it's like, you wouldn't survive in an MW2 lobby, but no, it was a lot of fun. And I probably have some of my best Call of Duty memories in that game, so seeing this game try to take on the challenge of being as good as that one is kind of fun. I will say, Call of Duty has never really been that great of a franchise, though. I mean, the multiplayer is good, the campaigns are sometimes good. This one, it sounds like it's going to have a map editor, and so that's pretty cool. If it gets a map editor before Halo Infinite gets forged, though, man, I'm going to be not too happy about that. Overall, I would say this showcase was probably a 4 out of 10 for me. There was a lot of CGI here that didn't really need to be shown. I felt like they were lacking some gameplay. And according to Jeff Keeley himself, it sounds like a lot of the original announcements weren't actually able to make the show. So yeah, there's a lot of smaller ones I could skip over. And with that being said, right after it was the Devolver Digital presentation. Now, Devolver doesn't have much they can actually show, but they did show a game called The Plucky Squire, which I thought looked really good. It's a very unique game artistically. It looks like a platformer that can swap between 2D and 3D. We'll have to see what happens to this one when it comes out. It looks like it's got a lot of potential, and it's going to be a sleeper hit. With that being said, though, I can't really rank the Devolver Showcase since they only did have 4 games, and I didn't really expect anything out of them in the first place. I was just expecting some Fall Guys DLC or something. And yeah, we did see some Fall Guys. I personally don't care a whole lot for that game anymore. But moving on to June 12th, it was the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase. Now, I do play on every major platform, including PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, and Switch. And so I have Game Pass Ultimate. I'm going to be able to play most of the games from this showcase, and I will be able to see how well it ages. Now, my expectations for this showcase were actually really high because Xbox hasn't released a first-party game all year to this point, and I figured that they've probably got to be hiding more than a few things at this showcase. Now, on one hand, I was pretty underwhelmed in terms of new content at this showcase, but to me, it's not the biggest deal because they had already shown off all of their major releases for the years after 2023 and prior showcases. So this was a showcase just focusing on the next 12 to 18 months, I believe, and they actually did a really good job of showing gameplay this time. Like, 80 to 90% of this showcase was in-engine gameplay, and to me, that's something that Xbox needs to keep doing for the rest of their showcases. They opened it up strong with Redfall, and this game, the gameplay looks alright. I still need to see more on it to really be convinced that this is something I'll want to play more than a little bit. It gives me the vibes of Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood. I think they've also mentioned that it is an open-world game, and so there's probably still so much of this game to be shown. Following that segment, they immediately jumped into Hollow Knight Silksong, which, I mean, this one a lot of people were amazed at because it had seemed like Nintendo pretty much owned the marketing rights to this game for some reason, but they announced that it's going to be a day one Game Pass release, and I don't know if it's actually confirmed for the next 12 months. However, this is a pretty big deal for a lot of indie players. They also showed A Plague Tale Requiem, if I pronounced that right. I did play the first game, A Plague Tale Innocence, and it was an okay game. It wasn't quite my thing all the way, but I know a lot of people are looking forward to this one, and it looks like the movement and the overall gameplay aspects have been improved here, so that's a good sign. They showed, like, 20 to 30 games coming to Game Pass over the next 12 months, though. And a lot of them are just smaller titles. There are a few big ones here and there, though. They showed off Forza Motorsport 8, which I'm not the biggest racing fan. I did play a little bit of Forza Horizon 4 and 5. I have played the older Forza games when I was younger. Again, though, I'm not really the biggest fan of the Forza games, so for some people this is cool. For some people like me, this is just whatever. Forza Horizon 5 and Microsoft Flight Simulator are both getting DLC. The Flight Simulator Halo DLC was pretty cool. Forza Horizon 5's DLC I'm sure will be fun for a lot of people, but not really something I'm like way looking forward to. They're just smaller things I'll probably pick up and try for fun. Fallout 76, which has come a long way since launch, is getting a big expansion. I've not played a ton of Fallout 76. I used to be a big Fallout fan when I was younger, and quite honestly, Fallout 76, I don't think it's nearly as bad as what people said it was at launch. However, it was pretty unfinished, and so seeing it come a long way is always nice. Elder Scrolls Online also gets another expansion apparently, and I've barely played Elder Scrolls Online as well. I don't really like it though. I definitely prefer Fallout 76 to Elder Scrolls Online, but that was pretty much the end of the Fallout and Elder Scrolls segments. Minecraft Legends was also shown, and I'm not the biggest fan of this. I think it looks alright. It's a real-time strategy game. I know a lot of people who won't play real-time strategy games, however, since this has Minecraft in the title, it's a whole different story. Loads of indie games were also shown off. There's one called Cocoon. There's one called Pentiment. I think the Pentiment game was actually done by one person. And I think it even leaked before the showcase. I think a lot of people knew that one was coming. Some people have some high hopes for that one. But beyond that, it was just a lot of smaller announcements until towards the end. So Kojima was finally confirmed to be doing an Xbox project. And to me, this is a huge deal because Kojima has always been close with PlayStation. And PlayStation fans aren't happy, but in my opinion, I think it's a good thing. I think everybody deserves to be able to play a Kojima game at some point. And I always love seeing his new ideas. Even though I wasn't a fan of Death Stranding, I loved what he did at Konami. I loved the Silent Hills, the Metal Gears. Just an incredible dude. Then an even crazier announcement came with Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal all coming to Game Pass. And this one is crazy to me because I feel like Xbox players didn't really care for these games, whereas like Nintendo fans were begging for them. But I always love seeing more people being able to play more games, and these ones are good games. I think that Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 Portable are also coming to PS5 because they weren't playable on it beforehand, so that's also good news for those fans. Diablo 4 was also shown, and I can't say a whole lot on this, but I bet it'll be pretty good. It sounds like they are doing not as many microtransactions, and it's definitely not going to be a pay-to-win game, which is good because Diablo Immortal just barely came out on PC and mobile, and it sounds like players are having a hell of an experience on there, and it sounds like mostly pay-to-win elements, lots of microtransactions. You could literally spend tens of thousands of dollars in that game. So overall, a good thing that Diablo 4 won't have to deal with that. But anyway, moving on. Xbox confirmed that Scorn is going to be a 2022 release. They also confirmed that Grounded's full release is coming this year, and As Dusk Falls. I believe those are the only three Xbox and PC only games for this year, which isn't a bad thing. They did get some games out for 2022. That's all that we really needed. However, it is going to be a really tough year for them looking back at it. And the good news is that going forward, every year beyond this should be better for Xbox and their supporting studios. But yeah, I do think this showcase could age very well, and I think that a lot of those smaller titles that they're showing look promising, and the fact that all of them are just going to be on Game Pass day one is really convenient. They also did have a second showcase, which I'll get back to here in a minute, but the closer for the main showcase was the Starfield segment. Now, I was personally blown away by this. I think that this game will be great. I would be amazed if this game isn't as good as it looks. There's a lot of fun to be had, it seems like. It did look a little bit like No Man's Sky, but not that much. It kind of had a mix of like Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds even a little bit. It looks like you're going to be able to build ships and build bases on the different planets. There's only going to be a certain number of planets that actually have unique content, I would imagine. However, in the entire game, there's over 1,000 planets, it seems. And I don't know how much of that was just randomly generated content or how much of that was handcrafted Bethesda well done content, if that makes any sense. So yeah, beyond unique content though, I think my biggest concern with this is the performance on the Series X. If they can get this running well on Series X, that's great though. I think there's going to be a lot of fun to be had with this game. But once it came to an end, I was a little bit underwhelmed overall with this presentation, just because Xbox and Bethesda, they both still have so much coming in the future. And I think for what we're getting in the next 12 months, it's fine. However, to me, the show was about a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. I do feel like with how poor of a year 2022 is, it would have been nice to have something, even seeing something like Avowed gameplay. And it may be far-fetched, but seeing Banjo-Kazooie get revived or something along those lines, it just didn't seem like there was that big new announcement. And I feel like that came at just about every other showcase during this entire not E3 segment. However, for me, the Starfield gameplay was so good that I didn't mind this at all. It was just fine. It was a good showcase. Again, I really hope they keep this high gameplay focus going forward in all of their showcases, and I would probably give this one a 6 to a 7 out of 10. It could very easily have been an 8 or a 9 had there been that surprise announcement for me. Again, I do think this showcase is going to age very, very well, though. Immediately following this showcase was the PC Game Show, and I don't have a whole lot to say about this show. I always watch it more for the humor and the stupidity of it. However, they did show the System Shock remake here, and it looks really good. They also showed off Half-Life Alyx mods, which I have only watched Half-Life Alyx. I've been too lazy to actually set up my Oculus Quest 2 to my PC and play it. There's also some new gameplay from the Warhammer game, and to me that looks really good. It looks like it's gotten some inspiration from Doom, is what it sounds like from the developers, and it looks fun. I don't know if I'll actually play that one, but it does look really good. Overall, though, the PC Game Show was like a 4, 3 out of 10. It just, again, that's just me not really caring a whole lot for what was shown, and I do think this showcase is going to, similarly to the previous ones, it'll have a few hidden gems here and there. So the next day was the Capcom Show, and I didn't really have a whole lot of expectations for this one. They opened it up with Monster Hunter, I believe, and it was Monster Hunter Sunbreak, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. It's a mega expansion for Monster Hunter Rise, which is on Switch and PC. I've barely played Monster Hunter Rise. I played a little bit more of Monster Hunter World, actually. I do think this looks good. I think that Monster Hunter fans are happy with it. Again, a very specific fan base. As long as they're happy, that's all that really matters with some of these. They went back to Street Fighter 6 a little bit. And again, I've said it a few times before, this game does look really good. For me, though, the Resident Evil segment at the end just blew me away. They announced Resident Evil Village DLC. It's also coming out the same day as Resident Evil Reverse, and Resident Evil Village, the DLC for this, it's adding a full third-person mode, so you can now play the entire game in the third-person camera angle. And that, to me, is so huge, because there's some sections of this where I really wanted to play it in third person. I feel like, whereas Resident Evil 7 really benefited from first person, Resident Evil 8 had some moments where I wish it were in third person. So seeing that added is huge. And it's also getting an expansion story the same day and some new Mercenaries mode features. So all of that's great. Following that, though, they also showed a little bit of gameplay from Resident Evil 4 Remake. And man, this game looks so good. I cannot wait to get my hands on the Resident Evil 4 Remake. I loved Resident Evil 4. I've loved the remakes they've done. Even Resident Evil 3 Remake I really liked. Sure, they cut out content in that one, but I still love the games. They are just such fun remakes. And really, that was the end of this presentation, though. Capcom, I thought they did a pretty good job. It was way better than last year's. It was a little more to the point, I felt. And it actually had a reason of being there. Even though they had already shown some of their stuff off at Sony's event, it was nice seeing this show go on. Overall, I would probably say it was a 4 or 5 out of 10 overall. But again, for the expectations, it may have been a little higher. And on Tuesday was the second part of the Xbox presentation. This wasn't going to have any new announcements, but I listen in anyway. It reminds me of a Nintendo Treehouse Live, where they kind of just show more gameplay and do a deeper dive. This was pretty cool, though. They actually announced Valheim, however you pronounce it. I've been playing that one on PC. They announced the console edition of Valheim, and it's coming out to Game Pass day one. I believe the console version is in 2023, but you can still play it on PC Game Pass starting this year at some point. This to me was a pretty big deal because I feel like console players would really breathe some new life into this game and give it a thriving fan base. I'm really excited to see how it plays on the Xbox, though. I really am. And I'm not really going to rank this presentation because it doesn't need one. It's really just, again, and it's an extension of the first presentation. I wish that they would do this right after the other presentation, just so that more people could tune in and see some deeper dives. Because, yeah, I feel like a lot of people took time out of their day to watch the first one, and it would have been easier for them to just jump right into the extended show rather than having to tune in 2 days later as a separate thing. But that's just me. So, Dragon's Dogma 2 was actually just barely announced today as of recording this. However, I had to miss the announcement because of the last main non-E3 segment, and that was the Final Fantasy VII showcase. So by the time this one aired, I was already pretty burnt out on all of the other showcases. This one, though, was only about 12 minutes long. My expectations for this were at rock bottom, but I am a huge Final Fantasy fan, huge Final Fantasy VII fan, even more specifically. I did play a little bit of that mobile battle royale game. I've played the whole game, the whole remake, well, part one of the remake, I guess, because that was the announcement here. They did announce Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 at this showcase. And it's actually called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I guess we're playing in a different timeline now than the original Final Fantasy VII. It would be very hard to explain. Crisis Core also got a remake. The original Crisis Core was a PSP game. However, the remake is going to be on PS5, Xbox Series X, Switch even, PC. It's going to be on a bunch of platforms, and I'm pretty excited for this one because I barely got to play Crisis Core, and it's kind of hard to find a copy nowadays if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty exciting, and I was blown away by that presentation because it was so straight and to the point where Xbox and the Summer Games Fest had these long, drawn-out presentations. Square Enix announced a ton of stuff within really 10 minutes, and I love the way they did it. Final Fantasy VII Remake, or Rebirth, I guess, it had a little bit of gameplay to it. It showed what the visuals are going to look like. It wasn't just a CGI trailer, and they even gave us a release window to it, so that was kind of cool. There was also this little alternate remake, but I think it was like a mobile port of Final Fantasy VII. So it's just cool that they're doing a lot with this one story, I guess. They did also confirm that there's only going to be 3 parts to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that's really big because this thing could have been drawn out for over a decade, and I'm glad it's not going to be. We're probably going to see the end of this by 2027. That's just my guess. It's a long time on paper, but it'll probably get here before I know it, and I just hope that they haven't screwed up the whole story and that it's a very good experience. With that being said, that was all of the showcases I got to see, and I believe that was all of the ones. I don't think there was a major showcase I missed. There was just a couple of smaller, tiny showcases that I may have missed. Nintendo still hasn't announced a direct or any presentation for the month of June. From the rumors, it sounds like they're doing one on the 28th or the 29th, and if that's the case, I may cover that in a separate video. However, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I would have to say that my favorite presentation of the ones I covered today may have been the State of Play. I do think that Xbox presentation's one to pay attention to over the years. I think that the way they handled it was a lot better than their previous presentations, so kudos to them. But yeah, overall, decent E3 segment. We got Resident Evil 4 Remake, a Last of Us Remake, Starfield, which, I mean, we'll see how that turns out. Trying to think of some of the other ones again. We had the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We had Street Fighter 6, Callisto Protocol. And I believe that was some of the major ones, but not a bad not E3. Just, it will be nice to see if E3 ever comes back. And yeah, major credit to Square Enix and Capcom for really showing up, at least in my opinion. Dragon's Dogma 2 was confirmed, I forgot. Crisis Core Remake. Final Fantasy 16. So yeah, there was just a lot of big announcements actually for this not E3. Next year when E3 does come back, I'm sure it'll all be in one big line again, like how it used to be. I don't think Sony will ever be back with a full major size event. In fact, I think Sony has another big event this year, similarly to last September. And it was nice to see a more evened out showing, whereas I felt like Nintendo really carried last year's E3. This year had more variety. But yeah, I hope Nintendo still does a presentation. They don't really need one as they already have a full schedule for 2022. However, it will be nice to see if they do those rumored Zelda remasters or that rumored Fire Emblem game or any of that. I'd also love to see a Metroid Prime remaster or remake. And also Metroid Prime 4. So yeah, expect Nintendo to have some sort of presentation here soon. But with that being said, again, thank you for listening. I apologize for the dogs in the background and my microphone cutting out like crazy. It's a bit of a new setup. I just completed a move, so figured I'd hop onto this YouTube thing again and kind of just talk about games. So yeah, I appreciate likes on the video, any comments down below of what your guys' favorite announcements were, anything I should check out, or especially anything I left off of the video. I did try to cover most of the major announcements, however, I guarantee there's one or two things I may have left off. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Bye.